Chapter 9 Zhen. The pitch black door, sealed tightly against both sight and sound, was suddenly pushed open. A tall woman with a dazed look in her eyes stumbled out, one hand covering her mouth, and hurried toward the restroom nearby. The heavy door swung shut slowly, but not fast enough to seal off the mocking voices that were still echoing from the luxurious private room behind her. If you can't hold your liquor, then don't drink. Does she really think downing a few glasses with those bosses will land her some good resources? It's not that simple. Exactly. Haven't those men already seen every kind of honeybee and butterfly flutter around them? And she still dares to squeeze in there like a moth flapping its wings. I'd say she's just desperate now and acting recklessly. I had that before this event she hadn't gotten a single gig in 2 months. Then won't that precious phoenix man of hers end up leaving her? Thud, thud. The microphone, studded with flashy rhinestones, was tapped twice. A pleasant male voice, laced with faint electronic interference, came through and sliced cleanly through the malice-laden chatter. Anyone want to sing? Looking for a duet partner? Several of the men and women sitting in the middle, gossiping, turned their gaze toward the far corner of the sofa. Someone crossed their arms and sneered. Oh, I almost forgot. We have got someone here who's dating a Phoenix man too. Lucian, are you still dating that so-called director of yours? A cherry soaked in liquor was pinched between fingers painted with cardamom red polish. She slipped it past her lips red as flame, rolled it over her tongue, then spat out the pit. Can that guy even spend 10,000 yuan a month on you? On the U-shaped sofa, the handsome men and beautiful women laughed in agreement, while others watched coldly from the sidelines. Clearly, Lucian had now replaced the drunken woman from moments ago as a new target of attack. Having spent more time by Shulang's side, Lucian had also picked up some of his composure and calmness. He held the microphone at just the right distance from his lips and spoke in a voice that was neither too loud nor too soft, but clear enough to carry across the entire room. Yup, we're still together, and doing quite well, actually. He smiled lightly, a hint of provocation in his expression. I have hands and feet. Why should I spend someone else's money? Aside from the low, slow rhythm of background music, a strange hush fell over the private room. The silence was eerie. My apologies. I have something urgent to attend to, so I need to leave first. Lucian rose to his feet and gave a slight bow to the others. But before he could take a single step, a cold snort cut through the air from a handsome man seated in the center. You have got plenty of time to chase down resources, but when it comes to spending time with your peers, suddenly you're too busy. Lucian, you truly have mastered the art of utilitarianism to perfection. Lucian's hand, hanging loosely at his side, clenched into a fist. After all, he had only picked up the surface of Shulang's composure, a clumsy mimicry far from the real thing. With just one jab, his mask cracked, and fury flickered visibly across his face. But before he could speak, the handsome man chuckled lightly. He propped his elbow on one knee and rested his cheek on his hand, lips pouting in a manner that was affected yet charming. Lucian, if you want to leave, that's fine, but you'll have to settle the bill for the drinks in advance. We agreed earlier that whoever leaves first pays the bill for the night. Lucian instinctively pinched the bank card in his pocket, his brows knitting as he asked, when was that ever said? The sultry woman seated beside the man let out a laugh. We said it the moment we came in. Everyone here heard it. Lucian, don't tell me you're playing dumb. Or is it that you simply can't afford it? Spent all your money supporting that Phoenix man of yours? You fucking... Lucian's national curse had barely left his lips when the door to the private room was pulled open from the outside. Bright light from the corridor spilled into the dim space within, like the divine hand of God tearing through the darkness, opening a door of salvation for sinners. Everyone's eyes turned in unison toward the entrance, and when they saw who had entered, an odd glimmer flickered across their gazes. In came a man and a woman, the same woman who had just stumbled drunkenly into the restroom to vomit was now slumped limply in the crook of the man's arm, her hands tightly clutching a brand new, just released Burberry shirt from the latest season's collection. A room full of finely dressed, handsome men and beautiful women naturally began their appraisal with the costly fabric, then slowly let their eyes travel upward until they reached the man's face. Broad chested and tall, with an upright figure and well defined, powerful muscle lines encased in a custom tailored black suit, he exuded a commanding yet alluring presence. What was even more exceptional was that the man possessed a strikingly handsome face. His eyes were deep, his thin lips carried a faint smile, and his features were sharp and well defined. That smile, gentle as it was, softened his innate severity and made him appear all the more handsome. Every movement he made carried a natural air of nobility. Though his demeanor seemed good natured, an undeniable aura of authority lingered around him, imposing and impossible to ignore. The handsome man sitting in the middle raised an eyebrow, clearly showing interest in the man whose face was more attractive than his clothes. The woman looked disheveled, but the man supporting her in his arm remained composed and elegant. He gave the already open private room door a polite, symbolic knock, a smile lingering in his eyes as he said, "I ran into this lady in the corridor. She seemed to be in need of some help. She said her friends were in this private room. I haven't brought her to the wrong place, have I?" His gaze swept casually across the crowd, finally landing on Lucian standing in the corner. A flicker of surprise passed through his expression. No, not just surprise, but something close to delight. "Shen? What a coincidence to see you here. Mr. Fan?" Lucian was caught off guard too, though more than anything, he felt utterly at a loss. That sudden tension spilling from Fanjo's lips was like an invisible hand tightening around his breath. The sweltering heat from that luxurious studio 3 months ago seemed to surge back all at once, and a flush crept slowly up his cheeks. He didn't know how to respond. After thinking for a long moment, he finally managed to say, "It's quite the coincidence. Give her to me." Lucian stepped forward to help, settling the drunken woman onto the sofa. He retrieved her phone, guided her limp hand to unlock it with her fingerprint, then scrolled through the call history. Finding the number most frequently dialed, he placed a call, gave their location, and asked someone to come pick her up. By the time he finished, he had managed to steady his own awkward emotion that had briefly overtaken him. Turning back, he met Fanjo's gaze. "Mr. Fan, this place." Lucian's eyes flickered briefly toward the young men and women sprawled across the sofa. They remind him of cold-blooded, venomous snakes, particularly adept at speculating about others with the most vicious side of human nature. As expected, the way they now looked at him and Fang Xiao was filled with suggestive amusement and thinly veiled malice. "Let's talk outside." "Here to hang out with friends?" The tall man spoke with extreme gentleness, even bending slightly at the waist to meet him eye to eye. "It's been almost 3 months since I last saw Zhen, hasn't it?" Lucian rubbed at the knuckle of his finger. The man's voice had a syrupy warmth to it, like a lollipop melting under the blazing sun, sweet enough to tint the very air around them. That awkward embarrassment, just barely dispelled, began to creep up his nerves once more. Lucian bit his lip and said, "I came to hang out, but now I have to leave." Fanshawe was nothing if not perceptive. His eyes swept once across the crowd, who were watching the two of them as though enjoying a show, still lounging on the sofa. His expression shifted slightly, as though he understood everything. Standing up straight, Fanshawe effortlessly embodied the composure and refined elegance of a mature man. He lightly placed a hand on Lucian's shoulder, guiding his stiff, frozen body into a position where all eyes naturally turned to them. With a relaxed smile, he said, "Since I stumbled into this room by accident, it must be fate. How could I leave without sharing at least a drink with your friends?" A murmur against his ear said only, "Be obedient." The warmth of his breath brushed against Lucian's ear, tangling with his own shallow exhales. That low, mellow voice stirred a tingling sensation along the nape of his neck. Lucian drew in a sharp breath, instinctively trying to create some distance between himself and Fan Xiao. But upon catching a fleeting glimpse of jealousy in the eyes of the handsome man on the sofa, he was rooted to the spot, and then he did not move. As the man ordered for wine, a ripple of hushed murmurs spread through the private room. Even those sitting in the center of the sofa couldn't resist exchanging glances, subtle but telling. They weren't strangers to scenes like this. After all, these men and women, who spent their days indulging in a life of luxury and pleasure, had high standards and sharper instincts. Still, in their experience, this kind of lavishness only occurred at certain high level social events and important occasions. Those who flung money about so lavishly always had some hidden agenda. They would not toss down hundreds of thousands without batting an eye, unless it was for a purpose. No one spent such sums of money like a fool, certainly not on a group of so called friends they'd only just met and hadn't even spoken a full sentence to. Thus, there was only one explanation. The man in front of them was trying to please Lucian. From the eyes of the handsome man across the way flickered a hint of mockery. His lips curled into a sneer, and he gave a soft, disdainful laugh. No one present failed to grasp his meaning. Is Lucian worthy of this? The waiter obeyed the order and left beaming with delight. Fan Xiao reached for the fresh bottle of wine from the table and said, "My name is Fan Xiao. I'm probably a few years older than most of you, so you can just call me Fan Ge. I'm especially happy tonight, thanks to this beautiful lady, for bringing me the good fortune of meeting Zhen, and all of you as well. Since you're friends of Zhen, that makes you my friends too. So tonight allow me to show a bit of my appreciation and treat everyone to some drinks. I hope you all have a great time." The man's voice resonated gently from deep within his chest, unhurried, even soft in tone. Yet the natural air of poise and depth he exuded was impossible to ignore. A kind of calm assurance and effortless grace seemed to radiate from his very bones, quietly taking command of the room, pressing down on everyone present. Because Fanjo remained standing, those on the sofa all rose to their feet to clink glasses with him. After the crisp chime of glass against glass faded, Fangio added with a smile, "Argentian is simple by nature, pure-hearted, and without much guile. He doesn't play tricks when dealing with people, and he often speaks without much filter. If in the past or in the future he ever says or does anything that might upset anyone, let me apologize on his behalf here and now. I kindly ask everyone not to take it to heart. After all, the world is full of people whose hearts are full of twists and turns, schemes and hidden agendas. But someone as sincere and genuine as Argentian is not so easy to find." Lucian, whose shoulder was still gently held by that steady hand, slowly lowered his head. In that moment, the little knot of grievance nestled in his chest suddenly dissolved and faded away. End of chapter 9. Chapter 10. I'm Homophobic. Although it was already past midnight when Lucian stepped out of the club, the damp summer heat still clung stubbornly to his skin. He tugged at the hem of his shorts, feeling a bit regretful for dressing so seductively tonight. Someone waved at him from not far away. Lucian knew there was no avoiding it. He drew in a deep breath, pressed down the inexplicable nervousness in his chest, and walked over. Leaning against a luxury car was a tall man. He had shed his suit jacket and changed into a trench coat, the lapels left casually open, revealing the subtle wrinkles pressed into his shirt beneath. His hair, once slicked back with styling gel, had come loose, a few strands falling over his forehead, swaying together with the coat's edges under the gentle pull of the night breeze. A cigarette dangled between his fingers, but before Lucian could get close, he stubbed it out on his own accord, lifted his hand to fan away the last curl of smoke still rising, and then turned a smile toward the approaching figure. Lucian, on instinct, tugged at his shorts again, wishing he could find a scrap of cloth to cover up the long legs he had always been proud of. Looks good. The man's voice was exceptionally pleasant, clear and cool, with a faint rasp hidden beneath it. It slipped into his ears like a feather brushing against skin, ticklish, lingering, dangerously soft. I just can't figure out whether you're hot or cold. His tone carried a teasing sharpness. His gaze, void of any overt desire, fitted between Lucian's bare thighs and the oversized fox fur jacket he wore. Then, with another quiet laugh, he reaffirmed, "But you do look good." That strange feeling came again, like his breath had been caught in someone's palm and slowly squeezed. Lucian's fingers grasped the air before he managed to speak stiffly. "Mr. Fan, thank you for tonight. Honestly, you didn't have to go to such trouble. They are not my real friends." "I know." "You know?" Perhaps it was the trace of alcohol, but the man's smile no longer held the same gentle warmth as before. Leaning lazily against the car, a languid curve tugged at the corner of his lips. "The moment I walked in and saw you puffing up like a little rooster, standing all proud and defiant in front of them, it was obvious something unpleasant had happened." The syrupy, doting nickname, Little Rooster, was no less than lethal than the tender Shenzhen. Lucian forcibly ignored the strange ripples stirring in his heart and searched his memory with some effort. "Didn't you only see me at the very end?" Fanshawe let out a low chuckle, laced with a hint of mischief. "It's all for show, just to add some dramatic effect." The words were half truth, half lie, and sure enough, Fanshawe caught the confusion flickering in Lucian's gaze. The two of them stood near the edge of the parking lot. Just then, a car approached from behind Lucian. Fanshawe's long fingers hooked gently around the chain button of the young man's jacket, and with a slight tug, suddenly pulled him forward right into his space. The car whooshed past, the gust of wind it left behind whipping up the fox fur on Lucian's jacket, fluttering wildly, just like his uncontrollable heart, which was completely in turmoil. Fanshawe's fingers did not release him, still hooked lightly on the button. He lowered his head, gazing at the young man's now nearly pressed against him, and murmured, "Buying them drinks was the same as slapping their faces. No one is allowed to bully my Shenshen." So hot, whether it was the heat from the art studio earlier, the sweltering summer air, or the rising temperature of his blood, it all felt like fire in his veins. Lucian stared blankly at the man's handsome face, his pounding heartbeat crashing against his eardrums, heavy and urgent, one strike after another. Suddenly, a phone began to ring, slicing clean through the thick, unusual atmosphere between them. Lucian jerked back a step, fumbling for his phone in a fluster. When he saw the name flashing on the screen, his expression instantly stiffened. Fanshawe caught without effort the flicker of regret and guilt in Lucian's face. He leaned his body once more against the car, uninterested yet impeccably courteous as he asked, "Do you need me to give you some privacy?" Lucian shook his head once and picked up the call. "Hmm, it's almost over. I'm with a friend right now." As expected, Fanshawe heard Shulang's voice faintly bleeding through the speaker. He lowered his gaze, concealing the smile playing faintly on his lips, an expression laced with unreadable meaning. With practiced ease, he slid out a cigarette from the cigarette pack and clamped it between his teeth. A smoke break at the right time could be very uplifting, just like now. Lucian was still on the phone. "You're working late, right? No need to come pick me up. I'll call you once I get home." "Okay." "Ah." That tall figure suddenly leaned in, pressing forward like he was about to pull Lucian into an embrace. The man's broad chest came so close it nearly brushed against Lucian's nose and lips. The fine fabric of his thin dress pants grazed against Lucian's bare, smooth thigh, leaving behind a cool sensation. Then the man's arm swept swiftly past Lucian's side, and the gust of air stirred by the movement kissed the young man's neck. Lowering his head, Fan Zhao leaned in close to Lucian's ear and whispered in a low, breathy voice, "There was a mosquito. I've already driven it away for you." He tilted his head slightly, eyes sliding over to the phone held up to the young man's other ear, and offered a helpful reminder. "The person on the other end just asked if you're okay. He sounds a bit anxious." It was as if Lucian had just been jolted awake from a deep, intoxicating dream. He quickly cupped the phone with his hand and hurriedly said, "I'm fine, don't worry. Just ran into a flying insect. I'm hanging up now, okay? Bye." Lowering the phone, Lucian secretly exhaled a breath of relief. By then, Fang Xiao had already retreated to his earlier position, cigarette now between his fingers, as he asked casually, "Mind if I smoke?" Seeing the young man shake his head, he struck a match, lighting the cigarette with a practiced flick, then waved his wrist to snuff out the tiny flame. "Just now on the phone, was that your—" The white smoke he exhaled, curling with his words, drifted lazily into Lucian's ear. The young man hesitated for a moment, then, as if making a decision, said, "Mr. Fan, thank you for tonight. You really didn't have to go to such expense. About the drinks, I'll pay you back. I don't have that much money right now. Would it be alright if I repaid you slowly, bit by bit?" Before Fan Shaw could reply, Lucian rushed on. "Also, the person on the phone just now was my— Fangirl. Lucian, you two still haven't left?" A melodious male voice suddenly cut him off. They both turned toward the sound. It was the handsome man who had been sitting in the center of the private room sofa earlier. He was descending the steps outside the club, a bright, sweet smile on his lips, but the hook-like gleam in his eyes never once strayed from Fanshawe, not even a glance at Lucian. With an air of leisure and grace, the handsome man sauntered over, coming to stand very close to Fanshawe. Tilting his head up, he looked up coquettishly and pouted, "Fangirl's wine got me drunk. You were so generous buying all that alcohol, but now you won't take care of me, the one you left drunk?" "Is that so?" Fanshawe bit lightly on the end of his cigarette, his eyes slanting sideways through the veil of pale blue smoke at the man beside him. With a casual smile, he drawled, "Then I suppose that really is a sin." Then his gaze shifted back, settling once more on Lucian. "Just now, you were saying the one on the phone was who?" Lucian glanced at the handsome man standing just behind Fanshawe, who was now clearly looking at him, thinly veiled contempt. Slowly, Lucian curled his fingers into a fist and shook his head. "It's nothing. He is family." Fanshawe raised a brow. "Family?" Something in that struck him as amusing, and he let out a light chuckle as he took a deep drag of his cigarette. Then he exhaled contentedly, as if coming to a private conclusion. "Your family sure seems to care a lot about you." The handsome man behind him was clearly unhappy at being ignored. A playful gleam flickered in his eyes as he hooked a finger around Fanshawe's sleeve and gave it a little tug, gently swaying his arm. "Fangirl's wine got me drunk. So how are you planning to atone for your sin?" Fanshawe spoke again, in that same slow and unhurried drawl. "You tell me." The handsome man cast a glance at the luxury car beside him, feigning a bit of unsteadiness as he said with faint restraint, "I'm feeling a little dizzy. How about you take me home, Fangirl?" The man let out a soft chuckle, and for a fleeting moment, Lucian seemed to catch a glimpse of coldness behind those half-lidded eyes. He took a long drag from the cigarette, turned his head, and exhaled the smoke sharply. Then he flickered the butt to the ground and crushed it with the sole of his shoe. Once done, Fanshawe suddenly raised his hand and peeled off the fingers still clinging to his sleeve. Sweeping back the hem of his coat, he tucked both hands into the pockets of his tailored trousers. He lowered his frame slightly, and looked the handsome man straight in the eyes, said each word with deliberate weight. "I am homophobic, so stay away from me." "But," he then added, slinging an arm casually over Lucian's shoulder, "but Lucian is an exception." End of chapter 10.